Good morning, good morning, good morning. Today's your boy Genesis. It is currently, good afternoon. It is currently 12:22 p.m. and today's date is the 19th of November 2024. Yes, y'all. All right, all right, all right, all right, all right. Okay, so what are we talking about today? We are talking about never giving up on yourself. Never ever give up on yourself, okay? Never give up on yourself. Never give up on yourself. No matter what, regardless of what you're going through, never give up on yourself. It's a new day, it's a new beginning, and of course, it's a day the Lord has made. All right, all right. All right, so tell me, how's your day been? Are you at work? Are you at home? Did you just got back or whatever you're doing? How has it been for you? All right. Don't forget, never give up on yourself, never give up on your dreams, never give up on God, okay? Never ever give up on your goals. Never. All right? Because you never know. You just never know. You just never know when it's your turn, okay? All right, what's going on here? It says here Trump expected to attend SpaceX launch. Of course, Trump is most likely to attend the SpaceX launch because Elon Musk. Of course, Elon Musk. Of course, Elon Musk. He's most likely to attend SpaceX launch because Elon Musk has been a very good friend to the 47th president elect for sure. And the fact is, he has been very useful and instrumental to his uh, election, to being elected the 47th president elect. He has been very useful. He was in Pennsylvania working and working and working on electing the 47th. And fortunately for him, Trump won. So, of course, this is going to be a very wonderful 4 years for Elon Musk and for for just the idea of space travel. That's definitely going to be the case because the president elect the 47th and of course the 45th was the one that set up space force, so he's really very interested in space travel. Okay, without further delay, let's get straight into the business today. Of course, this is going to be a short live stream, probably like 30-35 minutes, because I got to be a father and I got to take my daughter to um her evaluation today. So before that, I just wanted to come here, touch base with you guys, and then do what I got to do. Okay, and I'm gonna be back here too. I'm gonna be back here tonight. So let's get straight to it. What is going on?
President Biden pledging a record $4 billion over the next 3 years to the World Bank to provide help to the poorest countries.
This after the president made a major gaffe, missing the family photo with other G20 leaders. You could hear him murmuring in the background.
That's right.
Go ahead.
Lucas Tomlinson joins us live from Rio. So how did the president and Trudeau and the guy from Italy all miss the family photo?
Well, that's the big question here, Steve. Some think they didn't want to be seen with Sergei Lavrov on stage. Others think the event was just highly disorganized. But first, let me get to something else, guys. As you know, nobody who goes to the Oval Office leaves empty-handed. The same thing here at the G20 in Brazil. When the plate was passed around yesterday, President Biden reached into his pockets and pulled out $4 billion.
Now we need to make sure the World Bank can continue its work in the most vulnerable countries. I'm proud to announce the United States is pledging $4 billion over the next 3 years to the World Bank's International Development Association.
So, guys, when Biden arrived here at the G20 for his first meeting, he took a different route than the other world leaders we observed arriving. It might have been due to a ramp, an incline to enter the building. The White House claims it was for security reasons, but that apparently wasn't a concern for other world leaders, such as China's president or India's 74-year-old leader and Putin's foreign secretary, Sergei Lavrov. There was another incident, this is what you guys were talking about off the top, when it was time for the G20 group photo. Biden was a no-show. Along with Canada and Italy's prime ministers, Biden missed the photo. He was seen walking out just after the leaders began leaving the stage. Cameras captured the scene. Let's go to the videotape.
They're telling Biden, they're telling him to wait for Biden, guys. Oh my God. Do you see him, Joe? Far left. Left to the left of the palm tree. Oh my God. But they took it.
And the camera also was looking up in the palm tree for the president at one point. Now, a White House official says, quote, due to logistical issues, they took the photo early before all the world leaders arrived. So we can confirm that President Biden was not on the stage. Again, was that due to the fact that Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, was on the stage? Of course, President Putin is not here, but Russia is a member of the G20, or perhaps the event was just a little disorganized. But no question, Biden was not there, guys.
Between the ramp and the picture.
President Xi.
I've never heard that. That's Maloney, too, and Trudeau?
And President Xi was front and center, right?
Right.
That's right. That's right.
All
Something.
right.
What is going on right there, guys? Tell me what's going on right there, guys. Because I don't seem to understand what's going on right there. What is going on?
Give us alphabetical order, but the People's Republic of China, the P might land him on the second row.
There you go.
Mm.
This morning, just days after President Biden gave the green light, U.S. officials tell CNN that Ukraine is firing the first powerful U.S.-made longer-range missiles inside Russia. Moscow has said this constitutes direct U.S. participation, and it's being seen by the Kremlin as a major escalation of a conflict that began 1,000 days ago. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky is warning about what's ahead if Vladimir Putin isn't stopped.
Now, Putin has brought 11,000 North Korean troops to Ukraine's borders. This contingent may grow to 100,000. While some European leaders think about, some elections or something like this at Ukraine's expense, Putin is focused on winning this war. He will not stop on his own.
Cedric Layton joins us now. He is a CNN military analyst and a retired U.S. Air Force colonel. Previously, President Biden held off approving the use of these longer-range U.S.-made missiles out of concern it could escalate the war. Is that still a real possibility amid these threats from Russia now?
Well, especially with those threats, Pamela, yes, it is a possibility. And so that's why the U.S. is kind of threading that needle. Now, what they have seen, of course, in the past with every single weapon systems, whether it was the HIMARS systems or the F-16s or the Abrams tanks, they would have to get to yes at some point. And at first it was a firm no from the United States. And then as developments occurred, each one of those weapon systems became part of the Ukrainian arsenal. Sometimes, like in the case of the Abrams tanks, too late to have an impact on the battlefield as the Ukrainians had originally intended. But when it comes to the ATACMS, it remains to be seen. A lot of people are saying that this is a bit too late and the dollar short. However, it has had an impact already. And you showed the graphic of the attack on Bryansk, which is just to the west of Kursk, which is the region that Ukraine has occupied a part of. So all of this is an incredible movement on the part of the Biden administration to try to get a foothold in the area, a firm foothold that is basically a forcing mechanism to get the Russians and the Ukrainians basically to the negotiating table. And that's, I think, what we're seeing. So this can feed into what Trump wants to do when he assumes power. But it's also a situation where the Ukrainians have to have some tactical successes if they're going to have a successful effort at a peace conference and a viable ceasefire, at least.
I want to get your reaction. You know, as this is escalating right now, Ukraine is using these U.S.-made ATACMS. Russia has these threats. We're now learning that it has updated Russia's nuclear doctrine to theoretically, lower the threshold for Russia to use nuclear weapons. What do you think about that? Is Russia genuinely ready to do that?
Well, that really remains to be seen. There are a lot of things, Pamela, that the Russians do that are, in essence, bluffs. And what they have found is that their conventional forces are not up to the level that they need them to be in order to provide a credible conventional deterrent to actions by NATO countries or the United States or even Ukraine. So the Russians are moving back to their nuclear weapon systems, and they're in essence ditching a no first use doctrine. They used to have a no first use doctrine, and now what they're doing is they're saying we will use nuclear weapons when our country is threatened, when the existence of the Russian state is threatened. And that means also, of course, the regime. So that is one of those areas where this could potentially put Russia in a corner. But there are certain things that can be done to get them off the escalatory ladder. And that is, of course, what the Biden administration is, I think, trying to do at this point.
All right. Thank you so much, Cedric Layton. We appreciate it.
And joining me now from Odessa, Ukraine, is Oleksiy Goncharenko. He's an independent member of the Ukrainian parliament. So good to have you, Oleksiy. Let me just start with
Oleksiy Goncharenko. Yeah.
One more time.
Goncharenko.
Goncharenko. I appreciate that. As someone whose name is mispronounced, I certainly would like to get that correct. So talk to me first about what more you can share with us about this reporting of the Ukrainian missile attack inside Russia with these American-made long-range missiles.
I don't have much to add. We really hear the reports from Russian Ministry of Defense that Russian military object in Bryansk region, near 100 kilometers from the border between Russia and Ukraine, official border, was struck this night by ATACMS. That was said by Russian Ministry of Defense. 6 ATACMS, they said, attacked the base. 5 were intercepted. 1 was damaged. But the footage, the video shows that the attack was very, very successful. And this depot of shells and missiles was blown up. So that's what Russia is saying, and I don't have reasons not to believe them. So if they say it is ATACMS, probably it is ATACMS.
Do you believe, Oleksiy, that this new U.S. position on long-range missiles will be enough for Ukraine to hold on to Kursk?
It depends about how many missiles we will receive. Because the permission is great, but for permission we also need a number of missiles. Because just yesterday morning, Russia used 120 missiles against Ukraine. It's not every day, but that exactly morning it was like this. So the question is, how many missiles will we receive? If we will receive sufficient number, it will make a difference. If not, probably the effect will be less.
And to that point, I mean, a lot has been said about the incoming Trump administration, but Biden still has 2 months where he is in office. What more would you like to see from the Biden administration in that time?
First of all, I want to show you that Russia again was bluffing. Really, in the morning, they were speaking about nuclear doctrine, but already it was near 1 hour ago, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov in Rio de Janeiro at G20 said, oh, no, we're not going to nukes. And there was one more Russian bluffing. So don't follow their bluffing. That's the lesson to Trump administration from Biden administration. What else can be made by Biden administration? I think it's about sanctions against Russia. There are many loopholes which can be closed, especially in oil and gas industry. Financial sanctions, there are special condition for gas and oil, which still can be financed, Russian gas and oil, according to decision of U.S. government. I hope U.S. administration under President Biden will close these loopholes now. Will impose secondary sanctions on Russian oil and gas industry. That can have a really very significant effect. That's what I'm looking for.
And what about from the Trump administration? And what would you say the mood is within Parliament about the incoming administration and some of his cabinet picks that we know of so far?
Yeah, a lot of people are talking with one another. People are worrying, but also people are hoping. There are a lot of hopes. One source of hopes are the fact that Trump said that he will drop the oil prices, that he will drill, which will be very important because Russian war chest is filled by oil money. Second thing is we hope, we know that Donald Trump likes to be winner. So I hope he will try to achieve victory in Ukraine, both for himself, for United States, and for Ukraine, and for the free world. We don't know exactly what Donald Trump will do, but I'm sure that he will act in the best interest of the United States, which means that he should support Ukraine as an ally of the United States and as a part of responsibility of the United States after Budapest Memorandum 1994, when Ukraine, under American pressure, voluntarily gave up its nukes to Russia.
Last thing I just wanted to ask is how encouraged, if that's the right word, are you, not just by the U.S. decision to allow these longer range missiles to strike inside of the Kursk region, but the response that we're seeing from some of the allies, whether it's the U.K., whether it's France, and the sort of indirect consequences of that or implications of that?
We hope that all our allies will continue to rally around us, because what Ukraine is fighting for is not about Ukraine, just about Ukraine. It's about international law. It's about international order. If we will lose now, that will mean that the whole world will go to massacre, because in many parts of the planet, some dictators will decide to change the borders, and that would be the end. So all this axis of chaos, and Russia is not alone. Like you showed, Zelensky said, North Korean troops are already in Europe. North Korean troops are in Europe. So Russia, North Korea, Iran, and China standing behind them should be stopped.
Okay, we're going to leave it here. Oleksiy Goncharenko, thank you for the time today.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the live stream. You know what time it is. You heard from Ukrainian official right there. And, everybody's concerned, but they're like, yo, if the OG, the 47th president-elect gets in, everybody knows Trump loves to win. And, of course, America first, that has always been his conversation. America first. So, we should be getting a good amount of good vibes, really good vibes when he gets in there. All right, what is Mike Johnson talking about, the speaker?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're looking forward to being back here for another productive week before we break for Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone on the front end. House Republicans are continuing our preparations for the 119th Congress so we can hit the ground running and leverage our unified Republican leadership in the White House, House, and Senate to deliver for the American people in meaningful ways. We're also staying busy during this lame duck period, advancing important legislation, including two critical bills that I'll briefly highlight here. My friend and colleague on the Ways and Means Committee, Claudia Tenney from New York, she is pushing the Stop the Terror Financing and Tax Penalty on American Hostages Act, and we'll put that on the floor this week. This is a common sense piece of legislation that will prevent the IRS from charging late fees and penalties on American citizens who are wrongfully detained or held hostage abroad. Again, a common sense piece of legislation. This bill also revokes the tax-exempt status of American nonprofits that provide financial or material support to terrorist groups like Hamas. This bill addresses critical gaps in our tax laws to hold organizations and support terrorism accountable and provide relief for hostages who are just trying to get home and reunite with their families. Second bill we're also bringing to the floor, Congressman Russ Fulcher's Committing Leases for Energy Access Now Act, the CLEAN Act, which will require the Department of Interior to increase the frequency of geothermal lease sales from every 2 years to every year, hold replacement sales if necessary, and create decision deadlines for permit applications for better transparency and communication. We know that diverse and reliable energy sources are critical to our national security and American energy dominance, and geothermal energy provides clean, baseload power that utilizes the resources that we have here in the United States. Again, 2 common sense pieces of legislation that I'm sure you all are chomping at the bit to talk about extensively today in this press conference. Looking forward to supporting both these measures, and I will now turn the time over to our whip, Mr. Tom Emmer.
Thank you, Blake. 18 minutes. This is how long Laken Riley fought for her life until she was ultimately murdered because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democrats' open border agenda. Police found Laken with her skull bashed in by a rock and her body exposed. Yesterday, we learned that Democrats' failed policies resulted in Laken's alleged killer receiving a taxpayer-funded flight from New York City to Georgia. This is a slap in the face to the entire Riley family, a slap in the face to every law-abiding, tax-paying American citizen. And it confirms what we've known all along. Laken Riley's murder was entirely preventable, and the Biden-Harris administration is responsible. Unfortunately, her story is not an isolated one. There's 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary. There's 37-year-old Rachel Morin, and these are just the cases we know about. All of these young women were brutally murdered because the White House prioritized illegal immigrants over their safety. Thankfully, on November 5th, voters said enough is enough. They elected a Republican president, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate with a mandate to get this crisis under control and end the Democrats' open borders insanity once and for all. And that's exactly what we're going to do. With President Trump leading the way, our Republican trifecta is ready to hit the ground running on day one to secure our borders and ensure criminal illegal aliens are removed from our communities. January 20th cannot come fast enough. And now our Majority Leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Whip. Blake laid out the bills that we're bringing to the floor again this week. Yesterday, we passed a really important bill for our nation's veterans by Juan Ciscomani, named after Elizabeth Dole. It was good to get that bill passed overwhelmingly out of the House, now over to the Senate. Going to talk a little bit about the planning that we're doing for January. You know, we just got an overwhelming mandate from the voters of this country to, number one, reject the far-left policies that we've seen from the Biden-Harris administration the last 4 years, but especially to put the country on a different path. And we laid out during the campaign what that path would be, but we're now planning for the policies that we would put in place as a Republican majority with a Republican Senate and the White House under President Trump to get our country back on track, to focus on lowering costs for family at the grocery store, at the gas pump, their energy bills, to secure America's border. So once again, I assembled all the committee chairs last week to go through what we will be doing in budget reconciliation starting in January. This is going to be a busy process next year. We laid out a very aggressive first 100-day agenda, addressing the things that would get our country moving again, that would focus on lowering costs and getting our economy moving, making sure there is no tax hike next year. You know, if Congress takes no action, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act under President Trump, many of those provisions from 2017 would expire, leading to a large tax hike on families. We are going to work to prevent that from happening. So ultimately, if you look at what we're focused on right now, is being ready day one, starting in January, when we get not only that mandate, but that opportunity to get this country back on track with unified government in Washington to start addressing the problems that were created by President Biden and Vice President Harris. We are ready for that moment. We're already making plans, working with President Trump to get our country moving again quickly so that families can finally get relief, the relief that they not only deserve, but the relief that they voted for just a few weeks ago. And so leading that charge while he's not hanging out with Kid Rock at UFC fights and Jelly Roll is our Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Thanks a lot. Good morning to everybody. Glad to see such a full crowd. Every seat taken, almost standing room only in here. It is almost like a UFC fight in Madison Square Garden, almost as fun. All seriousness, we had a great weekend at Mar-a-Lago with President-elect Trump. talking about the legislative plan, talking about the agenda going forward, lots of substantive discussions. I met with President Trump and President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance and their senior policy leaders, and there's no daylight between their agenda and what they envision and what we envision for the House. And in order to accomplish all of that, the President needs an aggressive cabinet, and he has put forward some extraordinary nominees. I've met with many of them individually since those announcements have been made, and we're excited about the days ahead. House Republicans are committed to working with President Trump and his nominees and the administration as we prepare for what will be a breakneck 119th Congress. The agenda will be fast-paced. The first 100 days will be very full, as we have a lot to fix. And as I've said many times, I believe President Trump could be the most consequential president of the modern era because we have to fix everything. And by extension, Congress can be as well. And the incoming administration is going to be filled with great men and women, and we trust and hope that Senate Republicans will, and the whole Senate will perform their constitutional responsibility to advise and consent on President Trump's nominees and to do that in a speedy, expeditious manner. And as I said, we've been working with the Senate as well on this big plan we have to hit the ground running in January. We laid out this morning for the House Republicans what Leader Scalise was referring to, and that is kind of the overarching points, the overarching pieces of the reconciliation package. And in quick summary, we want to grow our economy and defeat inflation. We want to restore the border. We want to restore America's energy dominance, provide educational freedom, and dismantle the deep state. There are lots of course, details on each of those categories, but we're working all that out together in a bicameral fashion with Senate Republicans, House Republicans working together, and of course coordinating with the new Trump administration. In the meantime, we have some items we have to go through for the remainder of this year, as you all know. We have a disaster relief package that's been presented by the Biden administration, their request. And even before, I want to point out, even before Hurricanes Milton and Helene hit shore, House Republicans ensured that appropriate emergency funds would be provided to FEMA, as we did in that last funding package, as you know. And now that we're back in session, we're going to continue to provide for the American people with the resources that are desperately needed. So I saw firsthand. I went to the sites of the devastation. I went to Florida, where Helene made landfall, and looked at the devastation there, all the way inland, even to the agricultural areas. And then I spent a lot of time in western North Carolina, where it looks like a bomb went off in most of those areas there. So these communities can be rebuilt responsibly, and Congress has a role to play. We'll be looking at all that. On the floor this week, you heard a quick summary about some of these steps we're taking towards beginning to restore America's energy dominance. And tomorrow we'll pass the Clean Act to increase our domestic power production and strengthen America's energy security. We're going to pursue an all-of-the-above energy policy, and geothermal is a big part of that. It's just beneath our feet, and in the Mountain West states, this is a big thing. We're not going to waste it like the Biden administration did. We're going to use all the precious resources that we've been blessed as a nation to have. We'll also vote on the Stop Terror Financing and Tax Penalties on American Hostages Act this week. Common sense legislation, as you heard. It prevents the IRS from charging late fees on Americans who are held hostage or wrongfully detained abroad. This is an obvious thing that everybody should be in support of. We're going to make sure that we follow common sense legislation and these principles along the way, and House Republicans will fix that error this week and many, many errors in the days to come. So we're excited about that. I'll just say one quick note, and I'll take your questions. We just had a great gathering of all the House Republicans, as we do each week, and we had many of our member-elects, new members who will be coming in, Republican members in the 119th Congress. It's an extraordinary group. They've been on the Hill for the last week or so, having their orientation. I'm really proud of this group. They have an extraordinary set of skills and expertise they bring to the table and life experiences. Pound for pound, I think it's one of the strongest classes maybe that's ever come in for our party, and I'm really excited about what they'll contribute. And I told them and all of our members this morning, as we approach Thanksgiving, it's an appropriate time for all of us to be thankful, not just for the immediate blessings of our family and friends and the things that we enjoy, but for this great country. And the fact that I believe that we've been given the great blessing of an opportunity to save America. And that's what we intend to do, and we have a very deliberate agenda to pursue to make sure that happens. So we're looking forward to getting to work. Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, is freshman-elect Sarah McBride a man or a woman?
Look, I'm not going to get into this. We welcome all new members with open arms who are duly elected representatives of the people. I believe it's a command that we treat all persons with dignity and respect, and we will. And I'm not going to engage in silly debates about this. There's a concern about the uses of restroom facilities and locker rooms and all that. This is an issue that Congress has never had to address before, and we're going to do that in deliberate fashion with member consensus on it, and we will accommodate the needs of every single person. That's all I'm going to say about that. Yes, sir.
Do you plan on bringing Nancy Mace's transgender bill and putting that into the rules package?
I'm not going to address the plans on any of that. I just told you what I'm going to say about the issue. I'm not going to engage in this. We don't look down upon anyone. We treat everybody with dignity and respect. That's a principle that I've pursued my whole life, and we will take care of this, issue of first impression for Congress, as we will any other thing. We'll provide appropriate accommodation for every member of Congress.
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to ask you, so you've repeatedly said that one way you want to try to invigorate the U.S. economy is through confronting China. So broadly, how do you envision confronting China economically, and do you support specifically like a bill like Congressman John Molinar's that was introduced last week that would strip China of the preferred nation status?
Yeah, look, I think we have to be very aggressive on China, and I won't address specific measures, but we have a select committee on the Chinese Communist Party and the extraordinary threat that they are, not just to America, but to freedom around the world. I think it's a very, very serious issue. I mean, next to the national debt, I think it's our greatest threat to national security, and we have to address it appropriately. I expect that President Trump will be very aggressive on that matter. You've heard him talk about it for quite some time, and in fact, he started talking about that in 2015 before anyone else ever really was paying attention to it and recognizing the menace that China has become. So, look, you're going to have a very aggressive approach to this in the new Congress. Republicans are very serious about this, very sober-minded. We have lots of legislation, lots of measures that we'd like to pursue, but I'm not going to get in front of that and tell you what all that will be yet. Just know that we will take this very seriously. I think we've got to address it. Yes, ma'am.
You left the doors open for recess appointments, but you said, I hope that the Senate is going to do a job. My question, will the confirmation process be the ultimate test of the Republican Party unity or bipartisan cooperation in Washington?
Well, look, it all remains to be seen. I mean, I genuinely believe that the Senate should do its job. I think it's an important principle for us to maintain that an incoming president gets to select their own team. I think that's an important principle. The advise and consent responsibility is given to the Senate in the Constitution. They need to take that seriously, and they will. They'll properly vet nominees, and that process will play out. But look, I'll just say this about a number of the nominees that have been appointed. I think President Trump is looking for persons who will shake up the status quo. And we got a mandate in this election cycle to do that. The status quo is not working for the American people. And so these are persons who will go in and bring real reform, a significant reform to the agencies that they lead. If you poll the American people, they will agree that that is an appropriate objective. And so I think that the Senate should do its job and, sure, take a look, do a deep dive, vet these persons, but move them along for confirmation so that the president has the team in place to do what the American people have elected him to do. And we're going to support that effort. So thank you. Appreciate it. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. You just heard from Speaker Mike Johnson, and of course, articulate, calm, cool, collected. He has always been on the 47th side and is always saying, look, this is the 47th president-elect, and he deserves to have his pick and the best choice he thinks are going to make sure his agenda is up to par, come to reality. Okay, what is CNN talking about when it comes to Trump's plan for immigrants?
There's nothing more sacred or more serious that you could ask an American service member to do than deploy opposite American civilians. It is really a sacred and terrifying prospect for anybody who's been in uniform. I've been to combat. You could send me to Iraq, but to stand me across from American protesters in situations like we've seen across America is wrought with a tremendous burden you're going to put on men and women in uniform. So it has to be approached with the utmost seriousness. And obviously, there's no General Milley there now to stop a deployment like this. So we'll find out if the Secretary of Defense is confirmed and how the senior leadership and the Joint Chiefs respond to it. But I think every American should be extremely cautious about anybody who says they want to deploy American troops on U.S. soil.
Number one, they're not being deployed against American citizens. They're being deployed against the illegal immigration population, which, by the way, I think most people would agree is a national emergency, a national security emergency. Number two, for years, we've been deploying the National Guard to the
wildfires.
To the border.
For wildfires.
No, to the border.
In small numbers.
To the.
This is a very different thing.
Many state.
You can't deploy them to.
You got to make your speech.
Is it a debate with you, or am I answering questions with the host? Because every time I come on, you want to sidetrack and take me into your talking points.
By all means.
No.
Have at it, my friend. You're the expert. Have at it.
No, I'm no expert. I'm just a concerned American.
You act like one. Have we or have we not?
Have you served in uniform?
I have served as a United States citizen and have read the
newspaper. But I think
in this case,
I might have a bit of experience that you don't. I'm no expert.
Have you been to the border?
I have not been to the border.
Oh, so
I also haven't been deployed to the border.
Go ahead, by all means.
Regular military. Is there something different about having regular military at the border? I'm asking.
Well, one thing also I think we have to remember too, though, he did this in his first term. He declared the national emergency to unlock DoD resources, which could be used then to construct the wall. And so by declaring a national emergency, he can then activate military, not like personnel, but also resources, whether that is constructing encampments, using military flights, using other means to get these illegal immigrants out of our country.
The idea that any of that's going to happen in abstract without protesters and other Americans getting involved is delusional. I mean, if you go into any American city and start setting up encampments to put whoever in there you want, there are going to be citizens who are going to protest. There are going to be journalists. There are going to be a multitude of fraught and really daunting challenges for a 19-year-old holding a weapon in an American street.
Can I just
that is something
what's
that
the
everybody
alternative
should be
to let the crisis continue?
Wait a second.
It's not deploy the 82nd or let the crisis continue. There are plenty of middle grounds. And by the way, our military has got plenty of other priorities they need to focus on in addition to these.
I would just tell you that the election results tell me the priority that the American people want focused on is illegal immigration.
That doesn't mean
the
they want
priorities
this
are,
used as a
they want this solved now.
They want to solve it. They don't want the 82nd Airborne dropping in New York City.
I'll tell you something.
I think you're being a little dramatic.
I have a shop in my neighborhood, actually right in my neighborhood, on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. There is a shelter that houses undocumented immigrants. And I can guarantee you, I can promise you with every fiber of my being, because I'll probably be one of those people, that if anybody comes for these people and tries to drag them out by force, there will be protests of people like me, American citizens, who are going to stand there and do everything possible to prevent these women and children, which is all who these people are.
How about the criminals? How about the terrorists? How about the convicted
How do you
criminals?
Stop. How do you know who it is?
How do you sort through
them?
That's the problem. I don't know who
Stop.
it is.
Stop. I'm sorry. I live next to these people. I can tell you they are women and they are children. Are there terrorists among them? I don't know. But I can tell you that
and neither does the government, which is why we have to figure this out.
Okay, but what I'm telling you right now, practically speaking, is that there will be people, American citizens, who will prevent these little kids from being dragged out of these shelters. There are. And what's going to happen to these people? What is going to happen to the military when the military opens fire on us?
But no one's.
Can I say, hang on one sec, Chuck.
We're way down a rabbit hole here.
You ran and won races for some Democrats in some.
Bro, how does this even make any sense? You say you don't know the bad guy from the good guy, but yet you want to leave everybody in because you are so emotional. But you don't know the bad guy from the good guys.
Border states or help run and win some races. What do you think the mandate is?
I think the mandate is that you got to separate some of this. You know, I've been doing campaigns for almost 38 years. My grandparents came here from Mexico. I deal with immigrants. Two of my business partners are immigrants. And yes, I got to work for Ruben Gallego in Arizona. And we talked about the border. And I was there from day one with Ruben. And Ruben is a Marine combat veteran who saw some stuff in overseas that I never want to comprehend that he fought for me, right? This morning in my own building, in my own group in my staff meeting, let me put it this way, I'm sorry to get dramatic, but we had to have a meeting this morning because one of my employees, who is an immigrant, she's been here since she was 6 years old. She doesn't smoke, she doesn't drink, she has no criminal record, and she's against her religion to even say anything bad. We had to figure out what we would do when her TPS expires in March. If she has to self-deport, And she went to school here. She's been educated here. She is one of the finest human beings I've ever met. That doesn't mean that every single person who comes here, Scott, is perfect. But I'm just saying we have to separate some of this and think about this.
The challenge of sorting through them is mammoth. We had a hard time doing it in Iraq. Okay, our troops have had a hard time doing it in Afghanistan. Trying to ask them to sort through who's who and implement a policy like this, here in the United States is like nothing we've ever seen.
Actually,
I mean, hold on, maybe the only precedent we have is internment camps during World War II against Japanese Americans, but there's not a military precedent for sorting through who on the Upper East Side is an illegal and who's not. And you're asking a 19-year-old, right, holding a weapon, who signed up to serve his or her country, to thrust themselves into maybe the most fraught political topic that we've got in this country. People want a solution, but they don't necessarily want that one.
You've twice now insinuated that Trump's going to send the military to round up American citizens, which is totally false. There are 1.3 to 1.6 million illegal immigrants in this country today who have already received deportation orders from a court. You can start there. There's another population, as Mark said, that have either committed violent crimes in the United States or committed violent crimes where they came from. You can also do that. That has nothing to do with the people in your neighborhood, has nothing to do with the person in your office, and has nothing to do with whatever the hell you're talking about. It has to do with getting people out of the country who do not belong.
How are you going to deploy the military? Give me how exactly you would deploy an active duty military unit to respond to this crisis.
I would use the military in conjunction with local officials,
But what does that look
local
like?
law enforcement, county sheriffs, people who know their communities, because I assume a lot of the local sheriffs and jailers are going to be the people who end up housing some of these folks before they are deported. But there has
So what's
to be
the task
some
and purpose? What's the mission for that young private? What is he
mission-
actually going to be tasked to do? Guard a gate, or is he going to be investigating?
I don't know. I wasn't elected
But you're sitting here on CNN saying we should do it. I think you should think out a little bit more about what they actually should be required to do.
Who do not
'Cause
belong
it sounds
here.
real good.
One at a time. Scott, quickly.
There are millions of people who came into the country illegally, who have already received deportation orders, or who have committed some other crime while they've been here. The fact that you want to leave them in place is mind-boggling.
That is not what I said. That is not what I said.
Let me ask the same question I asked Chuck.
Yeah.
What was the mandate from the election? As much as any issue, immigration was on the ballot. So what do you think the voters were saying on immigration?
I think the voters are saying do something about it. I think broadly across partisan lines, there is almost universal need for people to do something about it. What you do about it is a totally different story. Can I finish, or are you guys going to jump in every single time? I know this is like the normal thing around here, but I'm trying to have a conversation without getting cut in half every time. The question becomes, what are you actually going to give them as a military assignment? Are they going to be guards on a gate? Are they going to be MPs doing checkpoints? Are they going to be doing crowd control against civilians who are protesting? Are they going to be JAG officers sorting through legal cases? What they actually are assigned to do is very important. And when that's put before the American people, I think we can find out what they do and don't support.
Yo, that guy is just on another level, bro. You said do something about it. So when you say do something about it, what do you actually mean by do something about it? Serve breakfast and lunch? Who knows, bro? I'm telling you, man. Who knows? Man, double tap your screen to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. What is going on with FEMA, guys? What is going on with FEMA? Okay.
A political storm over the federal response to Hurricane Milton will hit Capitol Hill tomorrow. A House oversight hearing is going to probe allegations that FEMA workers skipped over going to homes with Donald Trump political lawn signs. Now, FEMA claims that a rogue employee told workers in Florida to bypass those homes, and Republicans have cried foul, claiming it was all politically motivated. FEMA fired that woman, Marnie Washington. They say it was, quote, a clear violation of FEMA's values and principles to help people regardless of their political affiliation. This was reprehensible. Now, Florida even sued Washington and FEMA. Well, now Ms. Washington is firing back, saying that it's common practice for FEMA teams to avoid some places when it's based on hostile interactions. With me now, former FEMA official Marnie Washington. Marnie, thank you so much for joining. I understand this has been very difficult for you. You have received death threats and you don't feel safe.
No, I don't. And thank you for allowing me on your show and for giving me a voice. It's been a tumultuous event and an uphill battle. But what I'd like for the American people to know is before I even deployed to Florida, that this was the work culture there. I was on 2 teams in Florida. And the first team, when I arrived, they were implementing avoidance and de-escalation. And unfortunately, that trend ran with those Trump campaign signs. So before I even had my own crew in Highlands County, this was the practice. And
When you
it's
say
verifiable.
When you say, excuse me, avoidance and de-escalation, you shared the field guidelines with us, which urge workers to remove themselves from a hostile situation if they feel unsafe for any reason and if they feel threatened. Were there reports of hostility in the neighborhoods that you were responding to as a result of the presence of signs or otherwise?
Yes, we've had people verbally express to us that our presence was unwelcome and unwanted. Some people had some tact about it, and some people were not so nice about it. But all of this information was communicated with my task force lead, which is my direct supervisor. So I did not act on my own volition. Everything we did was out of the focus of safety and making sure our team felt comfortable.
Who gave those orders? You appear to be conveying them, but you weren't the one where they originated. Is that right?
That's correct. All of my orders come from my task force lead, Chad Hershey. His whole mantra this entire deployment was to make sure people felt comfortable and make sure that they felt safe. And that's because we were in what FEMA categorizes as political hostile territory.
Do you know how they define politically hostile territory? Was it a particular campaign that you were feeling that way towards, or was just the idea of the times that you were in at the times of the relief being requested?
Again, before I was even deployed to Florida, there are accounts of Trump supporters being very passionate about their political stance. And unfortunately, that led to them saying they would either do bodily harm to FEMA workers or they would do take threatening actions towards FEMA workers. And that was the trend, not just in Florida, but you'll see that in North Carolina as well and Georgia.
Did that translate to avoiding all homes that had a Trump sign, or were there select neighborhoods that you implemented that trend in or responded that way?
That's an excellent question. It was only selected areas where teammates felt uncomfortable. They did not feel safe and they feared for their safety.
So if this was something that you were following from FEMA's protocol, you didn't invent it, you didn't originate it, it was already a practice, you say, before you even got down there, why are you taking all the heat?
It is the surge capacity team that leaked that information, and they did it with the correct timing after President Trump took office. So this raised questions of violation of the Hatch Act, which clearly there's not, because we registered Trump supporters. We've given them service as well, just we avoided the areas that were hostile. Unfortunately, I ended up with double the teammates. We're supposed to only have 5. I ended up with 11 teammates, and half of those teammates proved to be anti-FEMA. They were quite critical of the entire deployment process while we canvassed Highlands County.
Do you think you're being scapegoated? Because FEMA noted in your dismissal letter that you had no prior disciplinary action, none, but this alleged misconduct totally outweighed your positive record. What did that feel like when you read that?
I'm certain I'm being scapegoated because my superior has been demoted in the past for giving the wrong orders. So now that this person is my superior, I've done my best to not only serve him well, but also serve the Highland County well as well. But I'm the scapegoat here, because it doesn't make any sense. You have someone with a clean record that comes highly recommended, and then you have someone that's been demoted in the past for egregious acts, yet you retain this person and promote them, but yet fire me and basically leave me out to be scrutinized and lie and tell the American people I was working on my own volition. I don't create policy. FEMA does. I just implement it in the field.
Well, the FEMA administrator, Criswell, is going to be testifying at tomorrow's hearing. Marnie, given all that you're experiencing, what do you want to hear from her?
It would be nice if Ms. Criswell would be human and come to terms with the fact that FEMA has not addressed the safety concerns that the crew leads and the specialists experience out in the field. There are plenty of reports that discuss hostile encounters, as how FEMA describes it, and our method is avoidance. I don't understand why we're hiding that from the American people. If someone feels unsafe, what employer subjects their employees to a hostile work environment? Nobody does that.
Have you been asked
Why
to testify?
can't we be transparent about that? No, ma'am.
Are you surprised, and would you do so if they asked?
I will come forward.
You know, I am surprised that you don't have current counsel representing you, Ms. Washington. Have you tried to get counsel and been unsuccessful in anyone representing you here?
Yes, apparently a lot of people are afraid to take on this case because no one wants to deal with the government. It seems that the Stafford Act is layered and complex, and most people that have tried to hold FEMA accountable for egregious acts in the past, they failed.
And here you are, waiting for a testimony on the Hill, asking a person to be human towards you. Marnie Washington, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the live stream. You know what time it is. Well, first of all, she's an African American woman and she needs to get canceled, that's for sure. And you shouldn't be representing yourself. This is just my opinion. You shouldn't be representing yourself when it comes to something this important. So, get on it, beautiful woman, get on it, okay? Make sure you get yourself represented by the right proper channels. Okay, what do we have here?
So with that, we bring in Joey Jones, retired Marine Corps Staff Sergeant, Kimberly Strassel, Wall Street Journal editorial board member. Both are Fox News contributors, and Jose Aristimuño, former DNC deputy press secretary and co-host on Americano Media. Great to have all of you with us. Let's start by this, because not all the folks out there on The View, shocking, and I'm sure, were so excited about this attempt at rapprochement. Watch this.
I will never sit with him. I don't think I'm going to have to. I don't think I'm going to have to make the decision.
I've heard a lot of folks on the left coming after Joe and Mika saying, don't normalize him. Well, 75 million plus American voters normalized Donald Trump by making him President-elect Donald Trump.
I don't think you need to sit down for 90 minutes at Mar-a-Lago and kiss his ring to be able to speak truth.
Kimberly, I thought this was fascinating. I thought that the very scripted statement today by both Joe and Mika was also interesting in how it played out. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, it's not kissing his ring to actually act like a journalist and decide to cover him, with neither favor nor fear. Simply treat him like he's any other president, point out the good stuff, point out the bad stuff. I mean, it's been really good to see some of that change since 8 years ago. And I think one of the things the press has realized is not only has it undermined public confidence in the press as an institution, hurt a lot of these outlets, but that they aren't even helping the goals that they seek to help. And that if you look at what the press did this time around, the ceaseless hostility to Trump and the endless praise of Kamala Harris, all it did was allow Democrats to live in a fantasy world where they didn't change direction despite the mood of the country, and then they lost in a landslide.
Yeah, and Joe, another really important piece of this is that the American public did not care what many of these members in the media said. They made their own judgment, their own decision based on what they wanted to change in their own lives in terms of who's in the White House.
Yeah, I think
that's the way it should be. That was for Joey. And Jose, I'll be right with you. Go ahead, Joey.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
No, listen, I think when you watch those clips of him at UFC, we talked about this on Fox and Friends Weekend all weekend.
Yeah.
There's a guy back there in the background of the group named Jelly Roll who took the absolute music industry by storm. And I don't know if he likes President Trump or not, but he doesn't care to smile and shake hands with him and take a picture with him. And he's like this ultimate redemption story. This is a guy that was in prison, is a drug addict, turned his life around, and now he's on top of the world. And I think to a lot of people in this country, that's what President Trump is. It's not that he's done something horrendously wrong, but it's his redemption story. He didn't win 2020, and he's back in 2024 more popular than ever, no matter what they've thrown at him. And I think people like Morning Joe see, hey, listen, if we continue to just throw things at this guy, we're going to ostracize ourselves, because you're not going to ostracize him. You're not going to turn the American people or their viewers away from him. If anything, they've turned them towards him. And I think some people just want to stay relevant.
Yeah, I mean, they've had a really rough time in the ratings. They have to try something different overall at these other cable channels. So, Jose, I'm curious what you think about this. Should all of these journalists, reporters, analysts sort of give a grace period and say, let's hope for the success of the new president and of the country?
I do. I think that's the approach that they should take. I think it's time for the great American reset. I think we should put our differences aside, both Republicans and Democrats, and we ought to wish the president-elect the best. There's no way that President-elect Trump will be successful if he does not work with moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans. He's got to get it done. So I'm optimistic about the tone. Who would have thought MSNBC and Donald Trump sit down for tea at Mar-a-Lago? It almost looks like a fantasy movie.
Friends, yeah.
But I think,
you know what?
but I think I'm optimistic where things are going.
That's great. Jose, I just want to play this. This is some of the young male voters at that event. And I just think we have to continue to listen to voices out there of what people think and what they say. Watch this.
Saving our country. I don't got no taxes on my tips now.
Well, I mean, where did you get most of your news and information?
Most of the information I got was from Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan?
Joe Rogan, a legend, man.
Yeah.
Yeah?
But mostly, like, social media.
A lot of podcasting. Yeah, like who?
Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
The Joe Rogan experience.
Do you think it was a mistake for Harris not to go on Joe Rogan, or do you think
Probably.
Our kids are important, guys, and if we're not teaching them well, if we're not teaching them about credit, if we're not teaching them about how to get a home eventually, and all we're talking about is racism and, trans and gays, which, like I said, I'm all good. Like, you do what you do. Just don't force on people.
Kimberly, super quick thought here before we move on.
Well, look, I think this gets to the point that traditional media, people ignored them this year, and the candidates, Donald Trump in particular, were smart to go around them and listen to the folks that were getting ears and eyeballs, and those were folks like Joe Rogan. You got to go to the people where they actually listen and talk, and if the media can't figure that out, it's going to have many more years of declining ratings and readership.
Yeah, and I think longer form conversations, it's nice to see a return to the desire to listen to longer form things and to read longer form things, because we've become such a clickbait, quick soundbite society. So thank you all so much. Jose, Kimberly, Joey, great to see you all. Great coverage this weekend, Joey.
This is the game. I've been saying this since like June, July. We've been streaming for like 4 or 5 months now, and I've been saying the same thing, okay? People care about the economy. People care about the gas prices. People care about the border. People care about foreign policies, okay? I'm not saying the other issues are not important. I'm just saying that I care about food in my fridge and freezer. I care about my daughter having some food to eat. I care about gas in my car first before I care about anything else. I care about the well-being of my household. That's what every single person cares about first before they care about something else. So you better be talking about the first primary thing people care about before you start talking about the secondary. I mean, what in the world going on right here? Man, double tap your screen right now. Subscribe to the channel. What is going on in Chicago, guys? Dang.
Brandon Johnson have ignored every plea, call, cry. You're going to protect the undocumented while you're going to allow for the citizens in Chicago to suffer.
You ain't going to abide by what the president of the United States said. Everybody know better than that. Loser.
Get rid of the illegals.
Illinois is turning purple. We're going to turn red.
Ooh, Chicago residents tearing into Mayor Brandon Johnson at a heated city council meeting last week, accusing the mayor of prioritizing the needs of illegal immigrants over U.S. citizens in Chicago. Tio Hardiman, executive director of Violence Interrupters, joins us now. It doesn't seem to be a popular guy, Tio, with many constituents. Who exactly does he represent these days?
Right now, Mayor Brandon Johnson, he represents himself and his party, because a lot of the people in Chicago are frustrated with his performance so far as a mayor, especially when it comes down to the migrant issue here in Chicago.
So what exactly is it that the constituents are upset about?
Well, African-American people have been deprived of resources for decades in Chicago. If you travel to the south and west side of Chicago, you know you can count thousands of abandoned buildings, a lot of people living in poverty, and people are just upset because there appears to be a priority for the migrants compared to prioritizing some of the issues of single African-American women that have been living like in homeless situations. We had over 60,000 homeless people living in Chicago before the migrants came to Chicago. And the homeless people here were never a priority until the migrants came to Chicago, and they're still not a priority even to this date. That's the reason why a lot of African-American people are upset. Hispanic people voted for Donald Trump as well in Chicago because some Hispanic people are upset. And people need to understand this. What Donald Trump is doing here, what he's saying is that if you come over here legally, it's okay, but do not come to our country illegally. So I don't know why people have a problem with that, to be honest with you.
Not just Hispanic people in Chicago, but all along those counties along the border in the southern part of Texas that have been blue for so long, they went red in this election. So the president-elect ran on and was elected on a platform to start deporting a lot of these illegal immigrants, beginning with obvious criminals and the trendy Aragua gang. But the leadership there in Chicago and the state of Illinois is saying, we're going to fight them every step of the way. Listen here.
To anyone who intends to come take away the freedom and opportunity and dignity of Illinoisans, I would remind you that a happy warrior is still a warrior. You come for my people, you come through me.
This is a city that will remain a welcoming city. We're going to stand up and we're going to protect undocumented individuals.
You know, a lot of people are saying that Kamala Harris lost because the Democratic Party is out of touch with what its constituents really wants. But what do you think of what the officials are saying to you?
Yeah, what people in America should understand that over 76 million people voted for Donald Trump. Also, Trump painted a very clear narrative that the Democrats have failed in the area of the economy, the conflict in the Middle East, the migrant issue, and so many other issues out there. The perceptionist Democrats have truly failed. I wish the leaders in Illinois and Chicago would fight the same way for this high unemployment rate for African-American young men between the ages of 16 and 25, which is staggering. It's around 85%. You can check those numbers out. Why won't we fight to make sure these young guys are employed here in Chicago? And we have issues with gun violence all over, running rampant here in Chicago. So let's step up to the plate and be just as diligent in our efforts to kind of reverse this tide of gun violence with this illegal gun trade in Chicago as well.
So here's the dilemma with the illegal migrants. The Biden administration let about 9 million of them across the border. A good percentage of those has now taken up residence in the United States as they await asylum hearings or other legal proceedings. You can't just leave them to their own devices or they'll be starving in the streets. You've got to do something to take care of them. But at the same time, you got to look after the community that pays taxes to you and people who have been here, for generations. But the real trick here is, how do you achieve the balance between those two things, Tio?
It's hard to achieve a balance because it's inhumane for some of the migrants to be in Chicago. And when they first arrived here, you had babies sitting on the streets and their parents begging for money on the street corners out of the babies had to sit out on the streets almost like 18 hours a day. And I'm not making this up. You can ride around and see what I'm talking about. The conditions, cramming people up in these places here, they call them these little migrant shelters, whatever the case may be, totally inhumane. It's hard to balance because right now Chicago's facing a budget deficit, and the mayor talked about not raising property taxes, and he had to backstep a little bit recently because the city council decided not to allow him to raise property taxes. But during his campaign, he said he would never raise property taxes. Yeah. So the migrant crisis has caused a lot of ripple effects here in Chicago and across our state. So it's hard to balance because we have to get our act together in our city first before we. How could you have a sanctuary city and you're not prepared to provide sanctuary, adequate sanctuary in the first place? Right. The reason a lot of people voted for Trump as well because millions of Americans are tired of these perfect candidates. Trump is what you call the not so perfect candidate, and he was able to identify with people from all walks of life. That's the reason Trump became the president here of the United States of America. Even though he had a whole lot of issues in his background as well, people just were tired. They're tired of people just telling them anything, and that's what's going on in Chicago right now. People are being bamboozled with the migrant crisis.
People decided that they really like the Trump policies, and we'll be watching closely to see how all of this is addressed. Here, Hart.
This is the definition of we are not going back. We are tired. This is the definition. You know, like Kamala used to say, we're not going back. This is what they mean. Really, they mean we're not going back to this same thing that has been happening. Listen to this man's, complaint. Listen to what he's talking about. You say you're a sanctuary city. However, you don't even have enough resources, or you're not deploying enough resources to take care of the people that you're trying to say this is a sanctuary city. So it's like, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. Okay. This is why Trump won the election. This is why he won the popular vote. This is why he won the electoral college vote. So it's like, people are tired. People are just tired, 100%. Man, double tap your screen, guys, and subscribe to the channel. This is just absurd. This isn't what, the people want. And they voted for the 47th president-elect, Donald J. Trump, because they want this stopped. Like, how hard can this be, bro?
Piers Morgan warning in his latest op-ed, the more toddler tantrum Piers Morgan warning in his latest op-ed, the more toddler tantrum throwing liberals gnash their teeth, stamp their feet, and shave their hair, the more ridiculous and irrelevant they sound. Piers Morgan joins us now. Piers, you can't say you're surprised by this reaction, or are you?
I'm not surprised, Brian. They are reverting to type. We saw all this in 2016. We're seeing it now with bells on. But honestly, I've just had enough of it. Will they just shut up? If they're not shaving their heads, screaming and posting the videos to TikTok, or they're disowning their Republican boyfriends for having the audacity to vote for a president who just won by a landslide, then they're now all running off X, Elon Musk's social media platform. They're all quitting. Because they say it's toxic and they can't bear it any longer. What they really mean is they are sick and tired of people messaging them, gloating about the fact they called this election spectacularly wrong. This election was an utter repudiation of everything they stand for. The woke world just got taken to the woodshed and chopped up, and they cannot handle it.
And Piers, you predicted, by the way, just for the record, you predicted one of the first, that would be the greatest comeback ever, and that it would be a big win, just so everybody knows. Lastly, also insincerity. You look, Joe and Mika, they met with Hitler over the weekend. Then we find out that Joe Biden, democracy's over if Trump wins. Hey, Donald, why don't you come over and visit the White House? They shake hands and talk for 2 hours. Don't they know they've been played?
Well, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Supposedly he's a fascist, he's the new Hitler, he's going to be an existential threat to American democracy. That's what people like Joe and Mika and what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and everybody else, all the liberals, have been screaming for years on end. And yet the moment he wins, suddenly Biden's inviting him to the White House, Joe and Mika are trotting down to Mar-a-Lago. But to give you some idea of the hysteria, Brian, over here in the UK, we have a bridge called the Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol. And the Clifton Suspension Bridge has actually announced they are quitting Twitter. It's a bridge. It's not even a human being. It is a bridge. And they are quitting Twitter. So we'll no longer, around the world, get our updates from the Clifton Suspension Bridge. These people are completely insane. And we should, I think now, pity them and care for them and put our arms around them because they are mentally unwell.
But it's also worth bringing up in the last minute we have, Piers, that advertisers, while they might, The Guardian and others might be leaving Twitter, advertisers are coming back to Twitter, which is now X. What does that tell you?
It tells me that Elon Musk is now the second most powerful man in America. and all these advertisers who tried to take him on and tried to score points and tried to play the woke card against him, which is ironic because, of course, he, like Trump, like most of Trump's cabinet, used to be Democrats, but then just realized they couldn't deal any longer with this insane woke mentality. It shows me that Trump is now got this guy Elon Musk at his side, and all the advertisers who ran away from Musk are now realizing they put all their chips on red in the casino and it just came up black, and they better get their act in gear, because I suspect that X and everything else that Elon Musk is involved in is going to be looked upon very favorably by Donald Trump. Now he's president of the United States again. So all these wokies who tried to play that card against people like Musk, I'm afraid it's all come back to haunt.
Elon has proven himself to be a legendary person. He's proven himself to be useful to mankind, to the United States. I mean, he's going to get the astronauts from space. This man is useful. This man is basically a good force in the universe. So, I mean, I'll support Elon. I mean, there's no conversation about it. This is my opinion, though. You don't have to agree with me, okay? I definitely support Donald Trump. Yeah, I support Donald Trump. And for sure, I support Elon. There ain't no way I ain't supporting both of them. I do support him.
Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky is optimistic about the future with President-elect Trump returning to the White House. Here he is.
І ще раз підкреслюю, з політикою цієї команди, яка зараз очолить Білий дім, війна закінчиться швидше. Це їх підхід, це їх обіцянка їх суспільству. І для них це також дуже важливо.
The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes, left unsaid by the White House is that Mr. Biden is trying to strengthen Ukraine's position before he leaves office. Mr. Biden would like to fortify Ukraine by delivering all of the munitions Congress approved in its most recent aid package. The tragedy is that Mr. Biden has hamstrung Ukraine on the delivery and the usage of advanced weapons for so long. In focus now, Mike Huckabee, former Arkansas governor and the Trump administration ambassador to Israel nominee. Great to see you. Let's start right now with this idea that Biden's about to do this as he leaves office. And what does that mean for incoming policy? And that affects the whole world.
It really does, Harris. It's a little unusual that a president in his lame duck days of ending his reign as president would make major policy shifts. It just doesn't really ring as to why would he do this. Is it to somehow hamstring or make it difficult for the Trump administration? I don't know. But it's not a good look, and it's not a good act on his part. And I'm hoping that maybe he'll back off. If he does anything, he should find out what the Trump administration will be doing and try to make sure that he helps accommodate that. That's what we would have in what I would call a peaceful and also a smooth transition.
Oh, interesting. So, Biden had the president-elect over to the White House last week. They spent like almost 2 hours together. And the length of that meeting alone would lead you to think that maybe this came up. This action was decisive by Biden. Make no mistake about it. And this is what needed to have from generals and other military experts that you and I both talked to. This is what needed to happen in the early days against Russia, not 1,000 days later. So legacy point, is it that? And what does this do for Biden? Because I have to think that's at play here.
It very well could be and probably is. But I again go to the point that we don't need to have a major policy shift right now about a month and a half before President Trump is sworn in, and then turn around and have a different policy shift as soon as the inauguration is over. There needs to be some consistency and continuity. I hope that if they did talk about it, that this is all in line with that. I wasn't privy to that conversation. I thought it was a good conversation. And the fact that they spent that much time together in a very civil manner was, to me, a great testament for going forward. But I do have great concerns that something might be done either here or at the UN that would make it more difficult for President Trump to get going on his agenda.
Yeah, it sounds like those Democrat governors across the United States. We'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But, yeah, there's a lot of pushback, anti-Trump still moving. And Israeli strike, missile strike in Beirut against Hezbollah terrorists perpetrating as a military for Lebanon, happened on Sunday and killed the terror group's spokesman. On Friday, another Israeli airstrike destroyed a high-rise building in Beirut. This comes as Israel continues to step up its fight against Hezbollah. A new opinion piece says, quote, as he heads for the exit, President Biden is easing sanctions on Hamas and Hezbollah while sanctioning Jews in Israel, under pressure from Israel bashing critics. A president who stood firmly behind Israel after the October 7th massacre seems to have lost his moral compass. A separate opinion piece here. President Biden doesn't grasp this. While he provided support, he also tried to limit Israel's independence. Every step of the way, he has micromanaged Israel and tried to leverage a patron-client relationship. President Biden said this earlier, just in the last little bit.
Israel has the right to defend itself after the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. But how it defends itself, even as Hamas cruelty hides among civilians, matters a great deal. The United States has led the world in humanitarian aid to Gaza. And we're going to keep pushing to accelerate a ceasefire deal that ensures Israel's security, but brings hostages home and ends the suffering of the Palestinian people and children.
The first part of that, Governor Huckabee, Israel has the right to defend itself, but, and then the rest of what he said. So you're the nominee for the UN ambassador for the United States at the UN for Israel. Do you and President-elect Trump see it the way Biden sees it, or how different will it be? Because you're right, this triggers yet another policy shift, or maybe not, but it looks like one right before Trump takes over.
Well, I haven't been confirmed by the Senate, so I want to be real careful that
You're
I'm
a
not
nominee.
speaking with some level of officialdom. But what we've had is a schizophrenic policy toward Israel. We've put far more pressure with Joe Biden on Israel than we have on Hamas, Hezbollah, and most importantly, the people who write those checks, the Iranians. Why haven't we put pressure on them? And I keep hearing about ceasefire. We can have a ceasefire right now. We could have had it on October the 8th. Hamas lays down its arms, gives up its bombs, bullets, rockets, and stops killing Jews.
Hostages.
That's the ceasefire. Yeah, and lets the hostages, 7 American hostages, Harris, why haven't they been released? Why hasn't this administration put more pressure to get those hostages, American hostages, all of them actually, but especially the Americans, than we're putting on Israel? This just doesn't make any sense at all. And this policy, which is on again, off again, is very disruptive, and it's really giving more rope to Hamas. And the last thing they need is some breathing room. They need to be suffocated and ended. There's no peace in that region until these terror groups, funded by Iran, are completely eliminated.
So why is Biden easing the sanctions on Hamas and Hezbollah, the bloodthirsty killers?
I have no idea. It makes no sense. It may be one of the dumbest policy decisions ever. Why would you ease up on people who are killing civilians intentionally? Why would you ease up on people who are responsible for the massacre, and I mean the bloody massacre, of innocent civilian Jews on October the 7th, and somehow think that you can negotiate with these people? You can't. Even our own State Department labels them as a terrorist group, not a government. So why would we in any way pretend that they are going to be capable of sitting down at the table, having Kool-Aid with us, and somehow we'll all get along, toast some marshmallows, and sing Kumbaya? Ain't going to happen. They've got to be eliminated.
Mike Huckabee, I know you are the nominee for the U.S. ambassador to Israel at the United Nations. Thank you very much. Appreciate.
What is going on, man? I cannot wait for the legendary, the 45th, now the 47th president-elect Donald J. Trump to get into the White House and fix all of this. I just hope it doesn't get bad before he gets in there, because it's like, can you just chill? Just chill out, okay? Relax. Just relax, okay? Just calm down and let the 47th resume and do what he's promised to do, which is peace in the world. Peace in the world, guys. We need peace. We need someone who can be a diplomat, someone who can have a conversation, okay, without getting all wild. Can we do that? Can we have a conversation first before we start going bunkers? We need a conversation, okay? What is going on in New York, man?
Fox News Alert, and 3 people are dead after a man with a knife stabs them in 3 different areas of New York City. The New York Post sums it up: trail of carnage. The suspect charged with 3 counts of murder as a serial killer. And Lauren Green has been tracking this for us. And Lauren, it's a horrific story. There's breaking developments. What do you know?
Oh, my goodness, Dana. Yeah, these were random and unprovoked, vicious attacks that have New York authorities searching for answers. It happened in broad daylight in the space of less than 2.5 hours. The first stabbing around 8:30 Monday morning. Angel Latalandi, a 36-year-old construction worker standing by his work site on Manhattan's West Side. Without warning, he was stabbed in the abdomen. About 2 hours later, across the island, a 68-year-old man was stabbed while fishing in the East River. Both men died shortly after the stabbings. Then a third attack just before 11 a.m. 36-year-old Wilma Augustin was stabbed multiple times near the United Nations complex and was later pronounced dead at the hospital. 51-year-old homeless man Ramon Rivera, who has a long criminal history and mental health issues, was nabbed after a passing cab driver who saw the third attack alerted police. A witness described the search.
I saw the guys in suit and earphones rushing and trying to look for a suspect, and we pointed towards that homeless guy because apparently he was doing something.
And Mayor Adams yesterday on mental health in the city.
It is a clear example of the criminal justice system, mental health system that continues to fail New Yorkers. Our hearts goes out to the families, goes out to other New Yorkers who observed such a terrible action. We would keep them in our prayer.
And sources tell the New York Post that Rivera confessed to the stabbings. He was sentenced in a criminal case a few months ago and was also arrested in a grand larceny case last month. And city officials are trying to find out why he was on the streets. Dana.
Guys, one thing is for sure. We need some Kool-Aid, guys. We need some Kool-Aid. We need to relax, bring down the tension. We need to relax, bring down the tension, and just unite as one. And of course, we need the economy getting back to some sort of, you know, normalcy where people who, have to work 3, 4 jobs can now work just one job and then still meet the bills, still meet the food, still meet all of these needs that they need to meet. All of these needs that needs to be met, okay? Because at the end of the day, if you're hungry, if you're not getting what you think you deserve, and you work so hard, you're gonna get angry. You're gonna get angry. The saying says, an hungry man is an angry man. Have you heard that saying before? An hungry man is an angry man. It is just what it is, okay? It is what it is. And I just hope this doesn't go, this whole situation of bad news happening around the world doesn't keep happening. I just hope it pauses and let the 47th resume office and let us have some, I think the best news we've had in here in a long time is Donald Trump winning the election. Really, like, him winning the election just gave everybody some sort of hope, you know. So I just hope the hope isn't ruin for anybody as time goes on. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning into the live show. This is the end of the live show for right now. We're going to be back. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. And believe in Almighty God. You know what time it is. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to the moderators. Thank you to Corey B. You know what time it is, Corey B. Thank you to everybody in the chat room right now. Thank you so much. Thank you to the veterans in the chat. We're going to be back here. We're going to be back here for sure. And God bless you guys, man. It is your boy, Genesis. We are here every single day, by God's grace, every single day. Thank you so much. Genesis is signing out. I love you guys, man. Thank you.